finally gave the Ringers Philly Crew a podcast. I'm Ben Solak.
And I'm Sheil Kapadia. That's right, just a couple of Philly guys with a new space to fire off some Eagles takes, get caught up in the Sixers chaos, and more.
We'll be coming to you twice a week on Sundays and Thursdays, plus bonus episodes whenever we get breaking news or Philly drama.
Join the fun and follow the Ringers Philly special now on Spotify.
This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day, or hiking, or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago, and the guy was like, "You're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago." I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details. This episode is brought to you by Read, Write, Own, Building the Next Era of the Internet, a new book from entrepreneur and startup investor Chris Dixon. If you're listening to this podcast, you know what it's like to be part of a community of fans. You value the people who play, perform, and create for everyone. Well, what if there are more ways to support them, more ways to be a fan? And what if you had even more ways to connect with the teams, artists, and other creators that you love? Even though creators make the internet valuable, how much value do they get for their work? Well, that's mostly up to a few big tech companies. Shouldn't creators get more from the platforms they make successful? More value, but also more say, more control, more ownership? Read, Write, Own explores an alternative future for the internet, one that reclaims control for creators, fans, listeners, and gamers, the people who not only use the internet, but make it useful. Read, Write, Own imagines an internet built by us for us. So order your copy of the book today or learn more at readwriteown.com.
Welcome back to another episode of the Ringers NBA Draft Show. My name is Kevin O'Connor, and joining me once again today is the Ringers J. Kyle Mann. What's going on, Kyle?
Not a whole lot, Kev. I'm just kind of trying to. I mentioned on our pod yesterday with my pod with Seared that I'm in one of those the answer. I'm in one of those periods where you're like, you feel okay. I'm like in like illness purgatory where I'll be like, all right, I'm good, I'm fine, and then that wave will hit you where you're just like, I have malaria. It's kind of like that. So we're in it. We're kind of this. I don't think it's going to be like Jordan flu game. I don't think I'm going to be like draped over your shoulders asking you to carry me. But it's, tis the season. We're gonna power through and talk about the thing that we love to talk about, which is the NBA draft. So
absolutely, and there's a lot to talk about. We haven't talked a lot about the Thompson twins, though, Kyle. They play for the overtime elite, Mann and Ausar Thompson. We haven't talked much about them, so that's going to be our topic today. In our notes, you put, can they top the OG Thompson twins? Which is an 80s group that I have to be honest, never heard of them.
I didn't figure you would. I feel like our like slugging percentage for my references, which this one isn't even like native to me. I mean, I was born in the 80s, so, but I think it's an interesting question is like, what would it take for them to surpass the Thompson twins, because their biggest hit, they're
not real twins.
Well, no, it's that.
I looked it up on Wikipedia.
Sure. Yeah, I love that you looked it up. Their biggest hit has like 72 million plays on YouTube, and I'm just like, that's pretty big reach, I'm just trying to think of how good would these two have to be. I'd assume they'd have to hit like all NBA status maybe, or like, I don't know. It's an interesting kind of cultural dynamic. Weigh in the comments and let us know what you think that the Thompson twins would have to do. That song, though, by the way,
Hold Me Now, pretty good.
You like it? I would rather have someone drop kick my face than ever hear that song again.
I mean, it's my first time hearing it. And I was like, this is very 80s. It's a pretty good 80s song. I would never choose it of the 63 million people on Spotify or 72 on YouTube or whatever. I'm not going to be one of those ever again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a nauseating song. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure we got that in there. But them as players, that's what we're here to discuss. People can kind of answer that question for me if they're interested.
I much prefer the new Thompson twins, and they play for the City Reapers in the Overtime Elite. We've talked about them in our first episode, gave kind of like a brief overview of who they are. So we want to catch up with how their season has gone so far this season with the City Reapers. They're 9-0. Undefeated. No game has been close except for the first one they had. They're winning by an average score of 98-75. So Mann and Ausar haven't played a lot of minutes per game, about 25 minutes per game for each of them. They're both 6'7", with near 7-foot wingspans, just over 200 pounds. They turned 20 years old on January 30th, so a little bit older than some of the freshmen in this class, which is fine. Mann's averaging 16.7 points, 5.9 assists, 5.6 rebounds, 2 steals, 0.7 blocks, shooting 67% from 2, 21% from 3, 82% from the free throw line in their 9 regular season games. Ausar, 17.2 points per game, 5.2 assists, 7.8 rebounds, 2.8 steals, 1.4 blocks, shooting 60% from 2, 33% from 3, and 64% from the free throw line. Just to give the basic box score overview of these guys in addition to their measurables. So it's been 9 games, Kyle. What have your early season takeaways been thus far this season with the Thompson twins?
There's a lot of layers to this. And I was going to say, you rattled off a lot of percentages there in a row. I know not everybody has access to Synergy, but there are a bunch of numbers available on Overtime Elite's website if people want to go look at those more closely. The important kind of bioblast here is that these guys, like Kevin said, took a different path. They didn't go to college. They didn't, go to the G League Ignite. This is a new thing that they're doing. I don't think they were the first twins. There was another set of twins that did it before them, actually, I think, or a set of brothers. These guys moved from California to Florida when they were in the 8th grade. And then they stayed at the school they were at, won a state title when they were juniors. And then their senior year went to Overtime Elite, which was this new thing. Both of them have around 6'11" wingspans, as I understand it. I know they've done some pro day stuff. We mentioned this in the first episode. These are elite athletes. Ausar is a pretty good athlete, but Mann would be, I use the term 99th percentile. I mean, in terms of perimeter athletes, he will have a chance to be the best athlete in the league. I mean, do you agree or disagree with that?
He's skinny, lean Zion.
Yeah. In terms of explosiveness, I'd say that's true.
The quick twitch, every movement is fast. Looks like he's on, 1.75 times speed when everybody else is just at normal speed. That's what it looks like when you watch on Ben Thompson.
Yeah, and I think that when people compare athletes, I know I did a video about point guards, about CP3, where I was talking about the different paces, the way stylistically guys play. I said Chris Paul was more like an R&B in the pocket drummer, and then I always thought that Derrick Rose was a heavy-handed punk rock drummer. Whereas I think when you're comparing types of athletes, I think that the powerful 0 to 60 speed of somebody like Russ, and then you compare that with the bendy, elastic, contorting, but explosive thing. I feel like Mann is kind of in that jaw. He's very elastic. He has a gracefulness when he's going around the rim. He doesn't just try to bowl you over with power or jump over you, which he can. Maybe it's a result of him just being so athletic that he can cruise. I'm always blown away by his gait and how just kind of graceful he is around the basket.
And it's what you're saying is true, with the ball in his hands or without the ball. And it's if he's sprinting up floor in transition, he's moving fast. And with the ball in his hands, it doesn't slow him down one bit at all. And I think the thing that's impressive with him is so many times you see great athletes don't know how to play slow.
Oh yeah,
they know how to tap the brakes and go from fast to slow, slow to fast when they need to manipulate defenses, use hesitations, hang dribbles. They get a bag. At 6'7", these kids are especially Mann, major shot creators. Ausar, more of the off-ball guy. Like you said, he's a very good, great athlete, but Mann is the otherworldly level athlete, which is why most, I believe most, if not all, big boards seem to have Mann ahead of Ausar. I think you find some, people, anecdotally, there are people that prefer Ausar. But Mann, I think the argument for him as the third pick is very strong. I'm not sure where I'll have him end up. I think I have him 3 right now. With him, it's also not just playmaking either. Everything you're talking about with him athletically, it applies to defense too. When he's really locked in. Ausar has been a bit better. You saw that with the basic box score stats. Ausar averaging more steals and more blocks this year, but Mann can be every bit as great defensively when he's locked in. I mean, those guys, they hustle. There's never any lapses when it comes to their hustling and their intensity, their focus. They're smart with rotations. When it comes to helping down inside, Mann had this block this year where he's helping off a basic closeout action from another teammate, and then he closed back out to his guy and blocked the corner 3-point shooter. He's that type of athlete where he's closing out in a blink and blocking 3-pointers. Ausar can do that too, but Mann and Ausar collectively, that's one of the reasons why their OTE team is just dominating every game. It's not just because they're creating buckets on offense. It's because they're dominating on defense together as well.
Yeah, I think, man, I mean, Mann, I know we're just kind of trending towards it because I do think Mann is the better prospect, and I think that's a pretty solidly true thing just for me. I haven't, I know maybe you have seen the people who anecdotally, like you said, have Ausar ahead of him. There are a lot of things to like about Ausar, but I mean, their ranges for me, you mentioned as high as 3. I've really flirted with the idea of having him at 2. That's the thing. He's going to be one of the. I've almost pulled the trigger, and I still might. He has a range. He's going to be one of the toughest guys to gauge for me because when I look at all the different wings in this class, and I'm just would I rather have Mann or would I rather have Cam Whitmore? Would I rather have Mann or would I rather have Dariq Whitehead? It's there are pluses and minuses all over the place. But his athleticism is the thing that is just so alluring, and you're it's going to open so many doors for him and the things that he does well. I think the big differentiator for me, though, is the fact his playmaking feel. And I think that when you watch, and the stats are a little weird. You can tell me if you agree or disagree with this, but the stats are, in some places, they're indicators how their efficiency shooting the ball. But the steals and things, if you watch their games, you mentioned that they're 9-0. They're not super competitive. I don't know where their age is based on the median age of the guys that are in the overtime elite, but they
on the older end. I believe it's for 16 to 20.
Yeah. So I mean, they look a little bored at times out there. They're physically ahead of these guys. A lot of their games end up in transition. So when you go and you watch their steals, it's just they're just jumping passing lanes with these guys who seem terrified by their athleticism and their maturity. Yeah. And then you'll watch them, and it's I was watching all of Mann's assists the other day, and I was well, 75% of them were just him throwing hit ahead. So you're not seeing a lot of half court chess. Is kind of what I was getting at.
Sure. And that's what if you're an NBA team and you're scouting these guys, that's where there's disappointment. I mean, credit to them for going to OTE. I think that organization has a lot of potential long term. But it's not they're going against grown men and 2A guys and guys that are going to get 10-day contracts in the NBA and the G League. It's not they're going to some high level, facing off against high level competition with crazy road games and loud crowds and college basketball. It's not they're overseas facing 30-year-old men, right? If you're ranking the competition, OTE is by far the worst that the top prospects are facing right now between international, college, and G League. And that's no disrespect to OTE. It's a young league. It's just the facts, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what makes it really tough when it comes to assessing everything you're talking about there, Kyle. It's I would love to see them have to play a game where it's close down the stretch in the second half, and they got to get half-court offense going, and they have to generate a shot when the defense is game planning against them. I would love to see that. But we're not going to see that. We're just not. In all likelihood, we're not.
I'd love to see him play Ignite. That would be incredible. I mean, I feel like Ignite would kick the shit out of him, but it would just be fun to see. I think one thing that I wrote down for you, I don't know if you got to check this out, but when I heard that they were going to be playing in the tournament, the TBT,
against Creighton, the Creighton players.
Yeah, the blue, I forget their name. It was just ex-Creighton guys. Yeah, and these were older dudes. And some of these guys I wrote down he was guarding Marcus Foster, who was an all Big East guard. I thought that game was weirdly a little indicative, honestly, because they didn't have like crazy output in those games.
The Omaha Blue Crew, for what it's worth, was the name of the game.
for anybody stressing over that. Yeah. No, I think they both had kind of like modest stat lines. I mean, it was like they both got 9 points. Mann got 4 assists, and they both got 2 or 3 rebounds and some blocks in like roughly 27, 28 minutes altogether. But I was impressed by their pace did show up there, and I thought the ease of the functionality of their athleticism. You watched Mann, you watched Ausar both sort of slither their way to the hoop, both like throwing together dribble combinations to like create separation and to create hesitancy in the guys guarding them. I thought it translated. I don't think that they seemed intimidated at all by that higher competition. They lost that game, but that was one little inkling for me. And I think that's going to be part of the search for them as we try to like contextualize how good they are. And we assume what's going to translate is those little kind of indicators against good competition.
And we need to see that. Like that, those indicators are important because the big question with both of them is the jump shot. That's the big, big concern. We touched on this in our first podcast back in November. You know, they both talked about, there's a great interview with Pro Insight where they both talk about the things they're working on, their mindsets, approach to the game. Like I encourage anybody to check out those interviews with Mann and Ausar. And they talked about trying to work on their jumpers. The numbers just have not been standout in any way. Like they've both had some hot stretches, but so far this season, including the 9 regular season games and their preseason games combined, just to get the sample larger, Mann is shooting 23.7% on 38 three-point attempts, 73% from the free throw line on 63 attempts. That's an encouraging number. Get over that 70% mark. 38.9% on 18 two-point jumpers, 59.6% on 52 layups, 45.5% on 11 floater attempts. So some encouraging touch numbers near the rim, right? Like then for Ausar, 26% on 46 attempts from 3, 64% from the free throw line, 40% on 2-point jumpers, 44% on 39 layups. Small sample. He was at 61% last year for what it's worth. 25% on floaters. I don't feel a lot of confidence that either of them are ever going to be good shooters. Can they get to average? Maybe, sure. I mean, I think that's very possible. I mean, we saw guys like Bruce Brown go from, low numbers from behind the arc to becoming a competent low volume 3-point shooter. You hope a guy like Matisse Thybulle can do that. Herb Jones is working on it with the New Orleans Pelicans. It's important to at least have the threat. Markelle Fultz, he's shooting well this year for Orlando. He's gotten better each year after the weird start to his career. It's important to have at least some level of a threat from behind the arc. But for these two, Mann and Ausar, is it a necessity for them to be worthy of a top 5 pick for them to have like a reliable jump shot, Kyle? Or like, are you feeling like, even if I tell you that they will never be 3-point shooters that are respected behind the arc, defenses are always going to give them Tony Allen treatment, the Andre Robertson treatment. They're going to sag off them when they don't have the ball. They're not going to respect them. Even if I tell you that, do you still feel a level of confidence, at least with Mann, that he's worthy of a top 5? And also, what would it mean for Ausar? I guess, where are you with their jumpers?
That's a good question, because I think the leniency and the room for error is just a lot stronger with Mann because of the playmaking and you see this with twins when they're growing up. I always think it's interesting that like they're just always together and there's only one ball. So it's like you kind of have to choose. I know I was thinking back about like twin brothers in the history of the league. I know for centers, it's way more interesting because it's just kind of like, how do you, one of them stretch sometimes today versus back in the day? That's a whole diatribe. But like, I think the leniency is higher with Mann because of the point guard skills, because he's on ball, because of his feel and things like that. He can get into the lane basically at will. And he's like I think his touch and his feel as a playmaker, as a passer is strong enough that I think he can get by and get to like a passable level as a shooter. And I think you can use him his ways. For Ausar, I think it's a little more damning because if he is going to need to be a guy who, if he's going to be a score first type player, and he's going to be and need the ball in his hands to do the things that he does well, but also be inefficient, I think that's going to be a lot tougher on him. I think that slides him down I've kind of got Ausar in that like 14 to 20 range right now, honestly. I kind of feel a little, I might even go up to like 12, 11, but I kind of, Amen's range, I think, is a lot higher because of that playmaking. And the shooting, I think, the shooting is pretty fun. It's not funny. It's just, it's interesting to go in and watch. I know that like they particularly have talked about their shots being rebuilt at OTE. You had a comment about like it was Ausar specifically, right, that had done some retooling with his jumper?
Yeah, I mean, they've worked on improving their mechanics.
Yeah.
More of a balanced, consistent release, better footwork. It just hasn't affected the results all too much. So, like, I just wonder with the both of them. I mean, like with Ausar, he shot in preseason, like I said, 26% from three on 46 attempts with preseason and regular season combined. That's a little unfair. He shot 8% from three in the preseason, 36% with their first group of games during the regular season, 26% with the second group of games that just got over last week. So like he's shooting closer to like, what did I say at the beginning of the pod? 30 plus % during the regular season. Still not great. But yeah. I think personally, I think the preseason sample should be included because we're working with such a small sample here. 9 regular season games. Like I want that to be beefier. I think it's fair to include preseason numbers there for the both of them.
And based on the quality of their competition, I don't think it's crazy to kind of just lump that in there because it's not a stark contrast between preseason and
not at all. And I think with each of them, like when you look for positive indicators for a guy who's a non-shooter to become a competent shooter, you're looking for a good free throw percentage. Like Ja Morant had that in college. He was 80+% from the free throw line. It felt projectable for him to improve. You want to see touch near the basket with floaters, those tough, like contested layups where your body's contorted and you're going to put English on the ball, off the glass. Like you look for that, like those type of offhand finishes. You want to see touch. I think they have solid touch.
Okay.
I don't think they have great touch by any means. Maybe Amen a bit better, a touch better near the basket.
A touch better, right? Okay.
But it's also tough to gauge because, like you said, so much of this is in transition. Some of this is like them, like I don't mean this in a negative connotation, screwing around in the sense like they might just be experimenting, trying things out when it comes to finishing near which is a good thing. When it comes to finishing near the basket, experimenting in games, trying to work on it, which is why with like certain prospects, like you see their shot selection and it's like, well, they got to get that out of their system. That's where the mental makeup matters. And I trust both of these, Amen and Ausar. They seem like smart kids with good approaches where I wouldn't worry about if their NBA team says, hey, we can't have you doing this, I think they'll get that out of their system pretty easily based off of my understanding of them. But I don't think their touch is great by any means. And that the free throw percentage is the real indicator there. Where's your level of confidence with Amen and or Ausar as potential shooters long term?
I mean, they have a lot of work to do, like we said, and they seem conscious of that, and they seem to embrace that. And you mentioned the Pro Insight interviews. I think those are fantastic, and I think if you're into the draft, you absolutely should watch those just to get a sense for how engaged a player is and like getting better. Every interview I've ever seen with them, they seem actively interested in getting better. You mentioned the defense, which I think we should talk about here in a minute, but if we have time. But someone was asking them like what their most like applicable skill is going to be, or what they're most excited about to do at the next level. And Amen specifically said defense first, like without hesitating. And I just think that they have a workman kind of attitude and an engagement in improving that's really good. And on the touch thing, which, like we said, is going to unlock a lot of things for them. It's interesting because, like, when they're in the middle of the floor, I think that Amen has an elite skill in the fact that he is complete. I always call it total elasticity, in the fact that, like, they can contort and get into gaps. You see this with Shea. You see this with Ja. We mentioned Ja again. He just has that body type, but he's just bigger. Like, he can like bend and get around guys. And so he has something that I always talk about, which is elasticity and then length, the 6'11" wingspan, and then touch. And he can combine all those things. Like he'll be around the rim and take his torso will be moving in a different direction, and he'll like finish with his left hand around people. I'm always impressed. I've been pretty impressed with his touch in that area. You don't see him shooting a ton of floaters just because he doesn't really have to. Honestly, when he gets that close to the rim, he's going to go ahead and finish it. I'm a little more confident on Amen than I am on Ausar. I put in our notes that Ausar kind of has a Draymond like backpack posture when he shoots the ball.
He does.
Heavy load up in his legs. He has a lot of work to do on his jump shot.
And Amen, you tracked his misses, Kyle.
I tracked them all. This is one of my favorite things to do. I was telling you, there's something relaxing about charting a player's threes because I always
love
go
doing
through
it.
Yeah, no, I love that you immediately shot back.
I'm the Ben Simmons, handed guy. I used to watch all of Simmons layups and
really?
Yeah, I used to track. I have an Excel document somewhere of all of his right hand or left hand finishes, where on the court it happened. I used to track Jay Crowder when he played for the Celtics and I was writing for Celtics blog, how Jay Crowder's feet would land, because my hypothesis was that Crowder was shooting inconsistently because of his footwork. Because sometimes he used to land really wide and sometimes he used to land really narrow with his feet like right next to each other. And then sometimes he used to land perfectly balanced. And I think the numbers gave like a slight, edge to him shooting a better 3-point percentage when he landed balanced compared to a narrow or a wide. He's never gotten better at that. Anyway, Mann Thompson, what did you track?
I think you can pick up on patterns. I think I always chart them. If I'm really studying someone, I'd never skip that part because I think that you can just pick up on tendencies that they have or things that can indicate oh, maybe this is a power issue. I track how they miss. I track how their makes go in. I try to pay attention to their arc angle, things like that. Yeah, because I was thinking back about, I guess it was LaMelo was the one that when I charted his feet, like you were talking about, I started to chart his feet and the drift in his body, like the directional drift, where he missed, how he missed. Was it catch and shoot? Was it a dribble pull up? And that was when I started to notice that there was so much drift in his 3-point attempts. I was like, if he just stops doing that, I feel like his percentage is going to go up. And it did. So I think those, when you just look at a raw number, it can be misleading. It doesn't tell the whole story. So for Amen, he has a lot of bad misses. That's the thing. When he misses, it can be wild. And you look at his shot in a vacuum, and I'm just he has a nice kind of wrist flexion. It looks good. It looks like his touch is fine. I worry for both of them, though, that I always say that speed is a cruel filter in the NBA. If you're a shaky shooter and you move to the NBA level, you can really suffer if you're somebody that can't move or can't get it off quickly. I feel like it could be ugly early on for both of them in that sense.
So Amen has 5 air balls in the year.
Yeah,
just throwing that out there. How do you survive as a player in the NBA today without a reliable jumper? We see the struggles fitting around a guy like Ben Simmons. For Philadelphia, they had great success for years offensively, of course, in the regular season. That's because Joel Embiid is Joel Embiid. He extended his range to become a reliable 3-point shooter. One of the reasons why I had Brandon Ingram ranked ahead of Ben Simmons back in their draft together was because I felt like Ingram was a good enough playmaker. He wasn't a great playmaker like Simmons, but he was good enough as a playmaker. He was good enough as a defender. And as a scorer, I felt much more confidence in him becoming a guy that could become a perimeter shooter. Granted, it took till New Orleans to become that. With Fred Vincent as a great shooting coach, it did happen. Fit-wise, there will be challenges building around Amen and Ausar. Easier with Amen, as we're talking about with all the other skills. Easier in the sense that both of them you can still rely on defensively as being stoppers for you, great off-ball helpers, versatile, switchable players, intense, playmakers on defense, good rebounders that turn defensive rebounds into instant offense. There's value aside from being able to space the floor. Just making that clear. But it is harder to build a successful half-court offense when it comes to playoff situations. So are there good examples of players in the league today, Kyle, that can serve maybe as, archetypes for them to, for teams to build with them? What comes to mind when it comes to the best fits or best situations for them to have success in the NBA? Because it's not easy if you're not shooting.
Yeah, the term build around is something. Yeah, that's I think the differentiator there would be the second way that you put it, build with them. I don't building around them would be complicated for that reason. I think if you're gonna have Amen be like heavy on ball. I mean, there are just obvious ways that you can
Kyle,
sort
if
of,
you're
like,
taking him with the second pick ahead of Scoot Henderson, you're building around him.
you think so? Well, that's not true year to year. I mean, like, that's not always true. I think, but that kind of comes back to
like build around, build with. He's one of the pieces you're building with.
I think build around means like this player has a skill set that like every decision we make from here needs to ripple out from that and like be a response to that. Like I'm thinking like if I draft Joel Embiid or if I draft Luka Doncic or I draft somebody that's a clear center of an offense and like a high level scorer, he's not that type of player. Which, you know, in your philosophy, that might mean he can't go number 2. But I think year to year, you can't be so hard line about that. You can't be so hard line about that. For me, the best fit for him, I think you'd have to have him in an offense where he's not just like standing still on the perimeter, number one. You're going to need to use him as a cutter, as a screener, sort of. I had him as a hybrid of, you know how like the Thunder will disguise and protect Josh Giddey's weaknesses in like using him. He's always a moving target. It's the same kind of a thing where like Zion, like we talk about this a lot when on the answer about like how they'll cloak and dagger Zion so that you can't load up against him. I think that you're going to want to keep Amen moving. I told you I thought an interesting fit for him, which I don't think that they're going to be up picking this high based on the mock drafts have changed. I think in like a 3-headed monster, like a Halliburton, Mathurin, Amen Thompson 3-headed monster would be unbelievable. Like I just
so
think
beautiful.
A guy who grew up playing point guard, I know it's fun to think about, but I think in those like 3-guard alignments, you don't make him the primary guy, but you put him in that situation where he's moving off the ball. He's a crazy, crazy athlete. He's going to be able to finish over the top of people. He's going to be able to move around bigger guys. Just don't put so much pressure on it. Put him in positions where his jump shots are not super mobile, or he's not having to like move off of screens and take tough threes. Like he catches it. It's a catch and shoot situation. I think he can get to a passable spot. If Herb Jones can, I think Amen can.
I think Indiana is an ideal situation. And granted, right now they have the 12th worst record. They're 15-16. They're sliding a little bit. There's a chance Indiana ends up like the 6th or 7th or 8th worst record where they could move up into the top 4 for an opportunity to draft Amen. I don't think that's not unfathomable. That could happen, Kyle. But we'll see.
But to you, Amen at 2 is unfathomable based on your philosophy, kind of.
No, okay. I don't think so at all. I mean, with Scoot, I love Scoot, but I really like Amen. I could see myself at some point before June changing there as well. I'm not ready to do that yet, but it's not impossible. No, I mean, Amen is on because of the size difference. Scoot, I love Scoot, but he's a smaller guard, and like no matter how much you hustle, no matter how much you try, you're going to be a target. And like I think with Amen Thompson, he's not going to be a target. He oftentimes will be the guy that you avoid defensively, right? Yeah. So I think there's a big differential there where with Scoot, I have a much greater level of confidence in him becoming a knockdown shooter. He already is a highly efficient mid-range shooter. He's a great free throw shooter. He has great touch near the basket. If he follows the trajectory that he's on, at some point, conceivably, he should become a knockdown three-point shooter. And if that were to happen, that's just going to open up everything for him. So I would have Scoot number 2 ahead of Amen right now. But if Amen shows some level of progress, or there's other things that pop up over the course of the season, like maybe Amen moves up. I could see that. Maybe a team ends up at number 2 where Amen's a better fit, where they don't need more of the point guard type in Scoot. But right now I have Scoot number 2. With Amen, I think Indiana's a great fit. I think you're right. Like you can make a Herb Jones fit with New Orleans next to Zion during the regular season, but we just saw what Milwaukee did to them the other night. I talked about this with Chris Vernon on the mismatch. They had Drew Holiday on Zion the entire game pretty much. And then they had Brook Lopez or Bobby Portis or Giannis Antetokounmpo just completely ignoring Herb Jones. Completely ignoring him. You can shoot. Shoot all you want. And they dared him to shoot all night. They dared Jonas Valanciunas to shoot, and he had the night of his life shooting threes. But like they sagged off of these low volume, average efficiency shooters or below average efficiency in the case of Herb Jones and said, Zion's not going to beat us. And he didn't. So I think that's the playoff formula that we're going to see against New Orleans when it comes to that time of year or in more big time regular season games until then, where like, yes, it's working during the regular season. Yes, Zion is still putting up historic numbers, but it could become an issue at some point down the line, which is why that like New Orleans is investing in those guys becoming at least good shooters. Like they have Fred Vinson work with Herb Jones and Dyson Daniels every single practice before every single game during pregame warmups. They are investing every little bit of energy they can with their assistant coach, Fred Vinson, who's the best shooting coach in basketball. Him or Chip England, who's now with OKC after years at San Antonio. Like it is vital though. Like if to surround your non-shooting star with shooters. So yes, I agree with you in that sense, but also I don't know if the downsides of that have really been revealed yet for the New Orleans side of things there, where maybe they won't be able to go with that long term. It just might not work. And like they might need to add a better shooter, or Herb might have to improve. And I love Herb Jones saying that. But like not having a jumper is an issue. It is.
Yeah.
It's just a problem. And I think that's where like I'm held back here because like I've been burned by like the Justice Winslows of the world, where like I thought Justice Winslow, if only he can develop into a reliable 3-point shooter. And granted, his career's been marred by injuries and all that. You know, he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's had some good moments. He's pretty good right now with Portland. He had some good moments with Miami as well. But like a Stanley Johnson's of the world, there's been a lot of guys who, if only they could shoot.
If only. I think the Justice thing is actually not a bad developmental track. Like, Mann is not comparable to hardly anyone as an athlete. But like, if you think about the way that you try to get Justice, his point guard instincts on the floor, and then you hope you can protect his shooting stuff. The precedent for guys going from non-shooters to shooters that are like playoff hardened is it's a tough conversation. It's not a long list of guys who like grew into dependable shooters. And I think you're right. And I think I also probably need to be consistent when I think about when I talk about like building your team for the last game of the season. I think Mann definitely has some things there. The other question though too is like, what if he becomes like a plus defender? Like what if he becomes like an elite defender because both of them are like super interested in that and take those challenges on. I told you the other day, Robert Dillingham is like one of the top ranked. They're competitive. That's the other thing that I think people need to know is that like these dudes don't mess around when like they smell blood. Like they're very competitive.
They're
like
killers.
My buddy was down there recently and he was like talking with them. And they had said like they were saying that they had it out for Robert Dillingham, who's like one of the top rated guards coming into college next year. We humbly accept, go Big Blue. And he apparently they had it out for him, and they basically kicked his ass. Like, granted, they're older than him, but I mean that's the kind of wiring they have. They're like, we heard you were talking shit. Welcome to the welcome to the prison you're going to be in for the next 40 minutes. That's kind of how they are. And I'm like, if they become that type of dogged player. We saw Scotty grow in, like Scotty's been up and down. Like we said, he's kind of improved. I lean hesitantly in the direction that they're going to become passable shooters. I do. I really do.
And that's all they need to be. It's just the truth. Like that's all they need to be. They need to be passable. If you tell me Mann Thompson shoots 33% from three in his career, I'm like, okay, great. He's the third pick in the draft. No doubt about it. And maybe he should end up number 2. Like that's where I am with Mann. Ausar, like there's the differential with them as creators. Ausar slightly better defender right now, but I think Mann can be equal when he needs to be. They're both great prospects. I'd have both of them in the lottery. Mann number 3 at the moment. Ausar back end of the lottery at the moment. I could easily see him rising into the top 10 for me. No doubt about it. Like they just need to become average as shooters. That's it. Just passable. And if they become any better than passable, they could become one of the best players in all of basketball.
I was going to say 30. You said 33%. I was like 33%. Oh my man, we're rolling.
Yeah,
that'd be incredible.
Well, I mean, and you imagine Mann Thompson if he becomes 2.5 attempts per game, low volume, but 38% from three. Then we're talking like this guy's one of the best players in the league.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just think he is going to be applicable in a way that's not necessarily going to need to be like the focal point, which I like those types of players that add playmaking, that add high-level defense.
To your point about building with, not around.
Yes.
He's one of those players where he can play with other stars, Halliburton, Mathurin, like you said with Indiana.
That would be fun to see.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how Buddy Hield or Duarte would factor into that, but I would. Be
They won't.
interested.
They're not factoring in. You're not building with them.
Yeah. Sorry, hit the bricks, buddy. I like Charlotte is another interesting one.
Oh, with LaMelo, that's intriguing.
That would be interesting. I don't know if Orlando. I think his challenges might like choke them a little bit. Like I like in terms of his shooting. I think they need somebody who's like legit two-way at playmaking.
OKC too. I feel the same way with Thunder.
I don't think they can afford to add another guy like that. It just becomes caveat city. Like I don't think they need to be going that way, but he could help a lot of teams.
Let's move on to the guy everybody wants with the weekly Wemby, Victor Wembanyama, our weekly update on him with what's happened this past week. The Mets 92 broke their 2-game losing streak with a 20-point win. But Wemby wasn't great. He had 11 points on 4 of 11 from the field, 5 fouls, 1 of 5 from 3, 5 rebounds, 6 blocks, 2 steals, typical stuff there. We've talked a lot about the stuff we've seen from him, the good and the bad. He had some occasional iffy shot selection in this game. He had this pull-up 3, heavily contested in the third quarter, transition opportunity where he caught the ball at the top of the 3-point line. And I thought he definitely should have drove or at least dished it to his teammate who was ahead of him on the break, sprinting ahead of him. I don't mind. It's whatever. You're Wembanyama. You can take the shots you want. But that's where I could see an NBA coach saying, drive the ball. Get to the rim. You're 7'4" and you have a handle. I could see that happening. I'm not worried about the fouls. A lot of ticky-tack fouls where he was, trying to block dunks. I like the effort. It's a good thing to see that. And he had that crazy sequence at the end of the game, the block, and then the sidestep 3-pointer, Kyle.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's that sort of stuff. Just if you showed somebody that clip, let's say we took a time machine back to the 70s and showed them that clip, it'd be that scene from Devs where they're like, turn it off. It would just break their brains. I feel like, no, I mean, he does do, he settles. And I think we've known that about him. I think he gets he's a classic, gets lost in the sauce. He's so talented. He likes to take tough face-up shots. I mean, that's something that's been going on. He likes to kind of show. I mean, even that game that blew our minds in Vegas, he took some shots that I was just like, what is he doing? I mean, he's just that kind of guy. I think he likes to experiment, which is good. I'm a big believer in experimentation and getting out there when it's acceptable. When the reps dictate that it's okay. I don't know. I always think about, for some prospects, if you think about their reps can be at lower levels, it can be a player has plot armor, but then once you get into higher, more on a show, it'd be a character has plot armor, and then you move into a higher, more competitive situation. It's oh no, there are actually consequences here. It's going to be interesting to see him adjust. We talked about LaMelo before. His dicking around in some of those games early on. You're just what is he thinking? And then he still is super creative. Even Steph Curry is a guy who's he experiments in a way that you're just what is he doing? But you kind of play with fire with some of those guys. Their creativity is a thing that you don't want to stifle, right?
Oh, no doubt about it. And with him, I mean, the highlight we're talking about, that happened with an 18-point lead with less than 2 minutes to go. And he's still busting his butt on defense, hustling. And then he hits that, I mean, they were already dead, but he a real, teabag with the sidestep 3-pointer. We talked earlier about how the Thompson twins are killers. So is Wemby. And I think with his mindset, which we've talked about on this podcast, I have zero question that creativity will not be stifled. It'll be nurtured, and it's going to mature, where he's going to become a player who's going to make smarter decisions, better decisions. Right now, he is the guy, and he'll always be the guy, but right now he's especially the guy for the Mets 92, where he's given the freedom to do that type of stuff. And he should be given the freedom to do that type of stuff, to work through that and grow from it. I think he's going to be a player long-term where you're going to see playmaking from him. You're going to see smart decisions in addition to just the wow moments with him as a perimeter scorer. I'm not the least bit worried about it.
You said it was a tea bag. He's so tall that on a jumper, it might have actually been an actual tea bag, not to make it too gross. I'm just I did have a moment there where I was most places have to dunk on somebody. He's so tall. Anyway, I don't want to go there mentally. I probably shouldn't have. Jessie.
Jessie just sends us the crying, laughing emoji in the Zoom chat.
Probably like, why did you say that? Anyway.
That was great.
No, Wemby wouldn't be doing this if he was still playing for Oswell, like the Tony Parker owned team. I mean, which was a different thing, this was a time, that's what the point of the Mets 92 kind of experiment was, like, we get to see some of these other things. Like, we get to see him unleashed. You're right. He should have driven in some of those situations. He probably should have made a short pass and did like the soccer thing, like their UCLA cut and go to the rim and catch a lob if that was there. I don't know. He's not a big driver, though. I mean, like, a lot of his drives are kind of like in and out, crossover, pull up. Mm-hmm. You don't see him like trying to, it's sort of the Porzingis thing. You don't really see him trying to contort and go downhill a whole lot.
I want to see that from him rest of the year. That's a New Year's resolution for Victor Wembanyama, which is what we're going to talk about on next week's episode, Kyle. We're going to do some NBA draft resolutions next week. And so make sure to tune into that. Subscribe to the Ringers NBA Draft Show. Follow the show. Send it to a friend as a Christmas gift. If you think they'd like the feed, it would really help us out. Kyle, this is a fun episode, man.
Very fun. Always fun.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Ringers NBA Draft Show. Thank you to Jessie Lopez for producing. Hope everybody enjoys the holidays. Have a good one.
I've had good luck with that. Like, I've never, like, I think I told you I got stuck overnight in Charlotte at like, our flight was like at like 10 p.m. and there was nowhere to go. So I just like had to lay down in like the fluorescent light in the Charlotte airport, and it was horrible. And like till the next morning. But I don't know. Have you had that happen in your hoop travels?
No, well, my first time ever on a plane, it got delayed till the next day. That was my first time ever stepping foot on an airplane. It didn't take off.
Were you like with your family?
No, I was by myself. I was going to the NBA Combine in Chicago. This was, I think, 2014. I had never been on a plane until I was 23, almost 24 years old.
It's impressive.
Yeah, really. So first time on a plane, I didn't actually go in the air, but we left the next day. I was all crushed that I was a day late to the NBA Draft Combine, all worried and all that. But yeah, it was cool. I just sat in the hotel for like the entire time because I didn't get credentialed. They didn't give me a credential.
You didn't?
No, so I wasn't able to go to the gym. I just did work on my laptop. I used to be working for Sports Aptitude, a sports psychology company. So I just like sat in the hotel on my laptop.
Oh,
and I just worked like the whole day. It wasn't great.
Yeah, it's funny how like those little moments like that, you'll blow them up like they're the biggest. Like this is like it's going to mean more than it is, or like it's like so damning. But then you'll look back on it and be like, why did I?
For sure.
I don't know. I'm like that. I'll get like all worried about stuff like that.
I remember I met David Griffin for the first time there. Jonathan Gavoni for the first time there. I don't remember who else. That's all I remember.
Yeah. Well,
I remember I ordered a deep dish pizza to the hotel, and I didn't know what size to order because it was my first time ever having deep dish, and like we weren't, because I was working so much, we weren't able to go out. Right. So I ordered the deep dish. I called. This was like pre-Postmates. I called up and had them deliver it to the hotel lobby, and I ordered a large. Thinking,
boy.
A large pizza. Well, a large pizza, not a big deal. And it's like this huge fucking massive just pool of cheese and sauce. I ate the whole thing, I think. But
no way, you did?
I might have over like
again, back in the
period.
day. I would have 100% ate the whole thing too.
I think I might have eaten the whole thing. I'm not 100% certain about that. I don't remember that detail, but I know I ate most of it for damn sure.
I didn't know if maybe your like embarrassment or shame was like stopping you from confessing that you ate it all. Like maybe like you actually know that you ate it and you were just hesitating.
I really don't remember if I ate the whole thing, but like I would assume I ate the whole thing. I know I ate a lot of it, and I assume that I ate it all.
How many calories was that? Do you think?
Probably like 4,000 calories
at least.
I know I at least took it back to my hotel room, and I think I probably had the rest the next day, but I'm not 100% certain about that either. I don't have a great memory, Kyle. Not like you, where your brain just fucking fires off these connections and makes all these magical things happen inside of it. I don't know how you do it.
The connections I can still kind of do a little bit, but I'm telling you, man, I think I've told you this before. The quick recall for like names and stuff, I'm suffering on that front. And I think I always compare it to like RAM. Like I know you like have more of a psychology background, but like I always think of my like quick access data of like names for players. Used to be my like superpower. I could be like this person and this, and I was like, I'll sit there and just like snap my fingers and try to think of a recruit's name. And I'll be like, fuck, I can't think of that guy's name. The pizza thing. I used to like crush whole large pizzas by myself. Like
Easy.
all
Not
the time in college.
You can't do that anymore?
I just choose not to. I mean, you just feel horrible if you do. Like I ate like a big slice.
100% true. You choose not to, because I can easily eat a whole pizza today. But it's like, no.
Right now, I could. At this moment, I just had like eggs and rotisserie chicken like an hour ago. I could have a whole pizza right now at this moment.
Eggs and rotisserie chicken? What?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite, like, healthy, morning breakfast / early lunches is egg whites. You remove all the yolk, or like maybe have half a yolk just to keep a little bit of that flavor in there, and mix it with rotisserie chicken. So chicken and eggs. It's
weird. I hope we're
delicious.
keeping this. That's a weird meal, man.
Yeah, eggs and chicken. You should try it sometime. Egg whites.
Dude, that is a bizarre meal.
Chicken. It's good.
Straight protein. Are you trying to evolve like in one meal? Is that what you're trying to do?
Well, no, but what's wrong with an omelet with some tasty rotisserie chicken? Sometimes, guess, like if we have like some leftover broccoli, I'd throw that in there. But we don't.
Okay, I guess I'm thinking of them as like separate entities, like cooked separately and then put together. But like, I'm like a scramble maniac. Like I'll put all kinds of stuff in a scramble. But that's I'm viewing this a little different.
Try it out. Next time you make some scrambled eggs, throw in some like pulled rotisserie chicken.
Okay, I mean, I could see that.
Give it a try, Kyle. Give it a try.
That's not that weird. Yeah, I actually, like, sometimes when I'm really hungry, I'll have a light dinner on Thursday, and then I'll go play pickup from like 7:30 to 9:30. And then on the way home, I'll cancel out what I just did and stop and have pizza. I do this like every week.
Every time I go to the gym, because I get so hungry after, it's like, all right, I got to pig out. I did good. And it all goes there.
Yeah, I ate one slice, and then I was like, man, I'm so hungry. I was
How can you only have one slice of pizza?
They're huge, though. I mean, it's like a
Costco slice of pizza?
For one slice of pizza? Like
it's massive.
The big boy slices, like the huge...
Like New York style.
Yeah.
When I ate one and the guy came by, he was like, another? And I think if he had phrased it any other way, if he had said like, doing okay over here or all done or something, I might have been like, yes. But the fact that he asked another, I was like, it was like Inception. Like he planted the idea in my mind and I was like, yeah, I will have another. And I got halfway through it and I was just like, what have I done? I was like ready to just roll out of there.
You have any Papagino's near you?
No, I don't even know.
Papagino's is like a Northeast pizza chain. And the pizza's not great. I think it's better than Domino's, at least pre-Domino's changing their pizza. I guess it's better now. Papagino's, I've always liked it. I used to love ordering like a whole large Papagino's pizza. And I devour it.
Like when you were you living with your parents at the time?
Oh yeah. I was
like, and you all would order a pizza knowing this is Kevin's pizza.
Well, there was one place we'd order pizza from that I wasn't the biggest fan of, and sometimes I'd order from Papagino's when they'd order from Maria's.
Oh, wait, you all would put in separate orders on the same night?
Very, very rare. That would ever happen. Very rare that would happen. But there, like as we discussed it, these memories pop into my head where it was like a couple of times I do that with Maria's. I don't want Maria's. I'll get Papagino's.
That's hilarious. I'm picky like that. I know, like when I was a teenager, I was so protective of my portion, like because you're so like your body is basically like a jet engine at that time of your life, and I was like practicing every day, so I was burning a lot of calories. But I remember we ordered this big pizza. And my sister, like, surprise, came home from college. She was like, hey, surprise, I'm here. And we had just gotten our food. And she was like, oh, you guys going to have dinner? And I remember we got in an argument because I was like, no, you can't just show up and cut into my portion of the pizza. She probably remembers that. I was just like,
I think that's totally fair. That's valid.
Yeah, I was like, you can't just drop in here and like take my part of the pizza. I was like, what the hell is this? Unannounced?
Order your own food.
If that happened today, I'd be like, thank you for saving me from myself. That's what I always say. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it takes discipline to eat healthy. I'm envious of those people with fast metabolisms that eat like pigs and they're skinny. Like who gifted you this?
I don't know. I feel like I don't know.
You don't work out. You don't work out ever. And like you have these horrible habits, eating habits, workout habits. You're so unhealthy. You don't even go to the doctor. And you're skinny.
Now that I'm bad about. I'm not good about going to the doctor. But
you got to go to the doctor, and you got to do your 6 month at the dentist too, Kyle.
I'm good. I've been going to the dentist with the Invisalign. I've had to go. They've kind of been on. I've been more on top of that. But
you got to get your cleanings. We got good insurance at Spotify. Got to get.
We do.
Yeah.
The fear
I've never had a
cavity.
Never had a cavity.
That's amazing.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's great.
That's amazing. I think when you have kind of crooked teeth, it like just lends itself to that. So that's one motivation for me. But I finally got my wisdom teeth out like last year. Thank God. But no, I'm getting better about it. It's just you got to go consistently, because the more time builds up, the more kind of shame you have of like getting that like reprimand from them. You know, you go in there and you just hear the bad news and dread it. And I don't know.
Were you flossing? It's like, no, that's why there's a pool of blood.
Yeah. That's why my gums swelled up like a balloon when you touched them just now. Oh, boy.
You just got to deal with the shame and do it.
It's true. Deal with the shame. The Kevin O'Connor story.
just like Mann and Ausar Thompson need to improve their jumpers.
Very smooth. The shame of a jumper that could keep you out of the lottery. Yeah, that's not our transition. I'm vetoing that one.